Hi students, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Central Europe. Welcome Jainil, welcome to our members. This is a members chat class everybody is welcome to watch. We are focusing on task 2 writing, especially on how to write a perfect introduction. This was a question that was submitted to us by one of our students that we're looking at today. It's kind of a trickier question, so it'll be good to work through it. As usual, this class is brought to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS success. Check us out there. For the general IELTS, visit us at, just a second, my camera decided to take a snooze, but no worries, we'll get you back. All right. There we go. So for general IELTS, visit us at IELTShelp.com. On both of our websites, we have lots and lots of information to help you improve and get a better band score on your next IELTS exam. Of course, we have professional writing, editing, and speaking services as well. So you can submit your task 1, task 2 essays. Hi, Patricio. Hi, Rashika. Hello, Ola, and salute to you as well. Chabi, good to have you in the class. Students, our websites look like this. This is the academic one here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join our premium IELTS package. It is a one-time payment for lifetime access to our website, to our apps. You can use it anywhere, anytime on your tablet, on your phone. So it's a worthy investment. It's a small price to pay for improving on the test, which is very expensive. This is gieltshelp.com with the green background. Same idea, the big red button to join the premium package for a one-time payment, lifetime access. We are a British Council IELTS registration center, and we are trained British Council agents as well. So actually, an interesting bit of news for today. So today we have this task 2 class and then a reading class. Tomorrow, no classes because tomorrow I'm sitting my IELTS exam in an official computer-based academic IELTS exam here in Budapest. I will be doing my speaking exam at 10:20 in the morning, and then from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. I will be doing the listening, reading, and writing sections, and I'll have my official score. So hopefully some other people that are watching will be sitting the exam with me as well, and I will, of course, give you feedback. So we believe in knowing the true experience of our students when we develop our materials, when we build our strategies. Thank you, Patricio. Yeah, Chabi, tomorrow's my test. Yeah. Thank you, Rajveer. And of course, I will share my marks and experience once I have it. If anybody has questions about the exam or our products or English, send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. All right. So with that bit of administrative news aside, we will have class on Saturday, by the way. So I don't take rests. So even after the exam, the next day, we will have more classes. That's when we'll finish this task 2 and we'll do a speaking part 2. Okay, so here we have our task 2 question. Let me just get this a little bit bigger. All right, there we go. Yeah, Jainil, it's on the same day for my speaking and for the rest of it. It's all in one day. I registered nice and early. Gives me a chance to do it all in the same day, so it's good for me that I don't have to split it up on different days. However, Jainil, I do suggest students that if you have the chance to do your speaking on a different day than your listening, reading, and writing, so it is actually a little bit better. It's better strategy to separate it on different days if possible. All right. Okay. So here's our writing task 2 question of the day. Again, this was submitted by one of our students, and we're going for that ultimate perfect introduction for the task 2. You can start your writing with either task. I always suggest starting with task 1 and then going to task 2. Okay, task 2 is worth more. So if you are going to make some mistakes getting the hang, getting into the writing, do it with task 1, not with task 2. Okay, so task 2, let's read this and let's start. So IELTS task 2 writing, you should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Should wealthy nations be required to share their wealth among poorer nations by providing such things as food and education, or is it the responsibility of the government of poorer nations to look after their citizens? That's a valid question. I think it's a question that many governments and many people ask around the world. All right, so let's take a logical and critical approach to this question. What is our first step? What should we do first? So we've read the question carefully. Read it twice if you have to. It's a good idea to do 2 readings of it. Preeti, I see that you're a gold level member now with your avatar. That's awesome. Okay, Rajveer says paraphrase it. Yeah, Janil agrees, right? We got to paraphrase it because we want to make sure that we have a clear idea about the question. We start thinking about some vocabulary, some ideas. So let's do that now. Let's paraphrase this question, meaning that we're using our own words, we're keeping all of the important information intact, and we're not losing any important information, okay? Good paraphrasing retains accurate information. That's important. And this is not your introduction. I'm going to talk about that a little bit today because I'm seeing some very low writing marks often with students. So, okay, so should wealthy nations be required to share their wealth among poor nations? I'm going to do a complete paraphrase of this idea rather than going word by word. So, okay. So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about rich and poor nations or nations with high GDP versus low GDP. GDP is gross domestic product, right? Their revenues. So is it to be expected that richer countries allocate their revenue to countries or allocate some revenue, I should say, instead of their revenue? It's a good idea to review and revise your paraphrasing. Okay, some is a bit more accurate here. So is it to be expected that richer countries allocate some of their revenue to countries with low GDP and give aid such as food and pedagogy? Pedagogy is another way to say education. Or is it the responsibility of local authorities to provide for their own population in poor nations? Okay, so there is my paraphrase, and this is what I have to decide on, and I have to write at least 250 words. Chabi says, are rich societies obligated to give developing countries aid in order to help them with such matters as education and food. Chabi, good start. Watch your spelling, okay? And low-level countries doesn't make sense. In fact, it's very incorrect politically, so careful. Mahmoud says, rich societies should not participate, Mahmoud. You need another word there. So rich societies should disperse their wealth among poorer nations for nutrition and training, okay, for such purposes as nutrition and training. Okay, Mahmoud, yeah, that's good. Not participate their richness. That doesn't make sense, okay? So careful. This is exactly why you're paraphrasing, because you want to make sure that you have clarity, and that also means clarity in your language use and in your grammar, okay? All right. Rajveer says, is it good that rich countries provide financial support for underprivileged nations by providing food and education and other services, or is it the obligation of the incumbent authorities of poorer nations to provide such services to their citizens? A beautiful paraphrasing, Rajveer. Very nice. I can tell that you've really improved and you're really practicing. Yeah, financial support is very good paraphrasing, okay? So sharing wealth definitely is financial support. That's a very valuable collocation to use in this essay. Good, Rajveer. Oas says, must rich countries support countries with weaker economies through financial aid for food and education, or should authorities in these developing countries pay attention to support their own communities, support and develop? Oas, very good. Oas, you're also making some nice improvements in your language use. Good job. A couple of slight corrections there, but yeah, nice start. Must rich countries support weaker economies, or countries with weaker economies? It's a tricky one, right? How do you express that clearly and accurately? Countries with weaker economies, countries with low GDP or low revenue, okay? Janil says, ought to rich countries. We don't actually start sentences with ought to rich countries, Janil. So it doesn't work exactly the same as should. Yeah, it's tricky because you think that ought to is always a synonym of should, but not in the question form. So good try, Janil, but no cigar. It does not work that way, okay? So must is better. Oas is using must rich countries. You can do that, but you can't use ought to, okay? So must rich countries need to provide some of their revenue for poor nations by helping such sectors like medicine, health, food, and education, or is it the responsibility of the authorities of poor countries to assist their residents? Very nice, Janil. So the start is a little bit awkward, but the rest of it is really good. All right. Now, Janil, careful with adding in your own information. So medical, health is not in there. Food, nutrition is okay, but health is not in there. So careful not to mix your own information. Okay, all right. So now we've got the right idea. What's the next step? What do I do after I paraphrase? So I did some paraphrasing. What are we talking about? So always ask the question, what's the topic? And when you identify the topic, what am I to discuss in my essay? That's the question, and that will equal your topic. What is your topic? And what are you to discuss in your essay? What are you focusing on? If we want to be even more specific, what subject? Okay, so that's the topic. What subject am I to discuss in my essay? And yeah, that's the topic, Janil, you're right. And then comes the controlling idea. What specifically about this subject am I to discuss? Okay, and that is the controlling idea. So what are we really talking about? Oh, it says development of weak economies. Kyber, very good. Aid to poor countries. Not just aid, but specifically. All right, Rashik, I see your paraphrase. The start is a little bit off. So healed is awkward. So well-to-do, Rashika. Well-to-do countries should distribute their wealth to destitute nations, or is it the accountability of authorities of poor countries to look after their inhabitants? Destitute countries is a bit awkward. Destitute means that it's not livable, but not quite in that sense, in a more extreme sense, okay? So a nice try, Rashika, but careful with those paraphrasings, okay? Okay, Kyber says aid for poor countries. Yeah. Kyber, okay, this was requested by you. Yeah, I remember somebody requested this not so long ago. Okay, so it is aid for poor countries. Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about assistance for the citizens of poor countries. Right? Everybody agrees that that's basically what we're talking about, is assistance for poor nations' citizens. What subject am I to discuss? Aid or assistance or help for poor nations' citizens. Okay. When you're thinking about these questions, always think of the original question, right? And then what's the controlling idea? So what specifically am I discussing about this? What's the controlling idea? And you want to really pay attention to get both of these correct. I think that the two main reasons why many students with a high-level English are getting low band scores on the writing section, it seems to be the most common section that high-level students get a low band score on, is because A, they're not clearly responding to the question, and B, their essay is not well structured according to a college or university level essay. Okay, while you think about the controlling idea, I'm just going to make a note of that. So note the two main reasons that many high-level English IELTS candidates score poorly on the writing section is because A, they do not clearly and specifically address the question, and B, they do not write an expository and persuasive essay according to a college level standard. Okay, so this is what we're really working on so that we can improve this and make our essays into a college level standard English, in this case, task 2 persuasive essay. Okay, all right. Kyber, I think you had the right topic here. So the controlling idea, Kyber says, is who is responsible for the aid? It's a bit more specific than that, Kyber. Yeah, so Kashirsha says, is it the role of authorities in developed or well-to-do countries or the nation itself, right? Yeah, Janil, very nice. So Janil's keeping it a little bit simpler and more elegant. So is it the responsibility of the rich or poor country's government? Or governments, if it's plural for countries, Janil. Okay, so the controlling idea, yeah, is it the sole responsibility of poor countries' governments or is it also the responsibility of wealthier nations? Okay, so that's the controlling idea. You have to be careful with the controlling idea and you have to be specific. So the question is asking, is it the sole responsibility, right? The question does not say that it cannot be a shared responsibility in this case. And logic dictates that it can be. Okay, so you need to be clever. You need to think outside the box and pay attention to this, right? So the second option does not state that it is just the responsibility of a wealthy country, but rather that it is a shared responsibility. Okay, does everybody get that? So everybody sees that clearly, that option A is the poor country is completely responsible for itself. No external or outside intervention or aid is required. Option B, obviously, is that the wealthier country gives assistance while the poor country also does what they can to progress. That's a very important idea to get here, okay, in this question. It's not the poor country and then the poor country doesn't do anything, but the wealthy country takes care of the population, all right? Okay, so it's very important. That's why you have to be accurate on the controlling idea. Okay, good. So now we have the right ideas, and now we need to ask some clever questions before we begin writing about this. So what's the first question? I want you to kind of focus on the questions here. Asking the right questions is really important. So what do you think is the first accurate question that I have to ask from myself here in this planning phase so that I really can write that top level introduction, that college level or university level introduction? Chabi, not why. At this point, I'm not asking myself why. Okay. So, yeah, Rajveer, very good. What does it mean to provide assistance to poor nations? Yeah, so okay, what does that actually mean? Or let's be more specific. What does it mean to provide aid to the citizens of poor nations? Okay. Good writing starts with good questions, and the more you can do that, the better it will be. Welcome back, Abil, or nice of you to join. Make sure to send me an email later so I can hook you up with those exclusive videos and get right in there. Start answering the questions that I'm asking, okay? We're just dealing with the topic here, not the controlling idea first, and it's very important to just deal with the topic here first. So what does it mean to provide aid to the citizens of poor nations? What does that mean for you? Because obviously that will have some different meanings for different people. Yeah, great, Uphill. Welcome to the group. Okay, make sure to follow the schedule. The schedule is on our YouTube community posts. It's also on our Instagram profiles. So we usually have classes at this time for members on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Okay, but Uphill, no class tomorrow because I'm doing the IELTS exam. So the next one will be Saturday. Kyber says to avoid citizens to immigrate. I don't think so, Kyber. I mean, immigration doesn't necessarily have to do with the support that people receive. So to live happy in their own country, too abstract, Kyber, too qualitative. Mahmoud says emphasis on humanity. Chabi says, okay, donating food and medical equipment along with money to support health and education systems in weak economies. Okay, that's a better answer, Chabi. So that's a more usable answer. Okay, it's a more useful answer. Okay. Janil says, give financial support to improve poor countries' citizens. Is that really it, though? I mean, does financial aid actually do much? So I don't know about that. Patricio says to provide economic support, reducing taxes. I think that's a bit awkward. I think you have to keep your thoughts simpler, Patricio. Otherwise, you will have a really difficult time to create a clear idea for your reader. Okay. Yeah, so Rajveer says it's the process of helping underprivileged citizens of poor nations by providing food, education, and other sustenance needs. Okay, so I would write something like this. All right, this is how I would phrase it. I'm sure there are different ways and different people might phrase this differently, but for me, when I visualize this, I would say improving the quality of life. So that's my qualitative, right? I mean, it's in the word, quality of life, qualitative. So improving the quality of life for impoverished citizens. Impoverished meaning poor, it's a more technical word. Citizens in poor countries by providing basic needs, right? So at least they have to have the shelter, the clothing, the food, of course. And then education, we're talking about literacy and basic mathematics for not only survival, but also for development and growth, right? So that they can develop and become self-sufficient, right? Okay, so that's really what it means to provide aid to citizens, okay? This is very important in Kyber. This is why you want to make sure you get this, because this is going to be your background, your definition of terms, right? So everybody realizes that's why this is an important question and answer, because in your introduction, this becomes the information for your definition of the background. You have to remember that with 100 students answering this question, different students will have a different definition of what this means to give food to poor nations. Some people will say it's basically giving them a bag of rice. Some people will say it's giving them vitamins and nutritious meals that also have protein, like chicken. So we have different definitions. Some people will say education is basic primary school, middle school, high school literacy. Some people will say it should include college, university education. So different definitions, different concepts, has to be clear, okay? Like Preeti is saying right now, giving scholarships to students. That's okay, Preeti, as long as you're including that in your definition, okay, of your introduction. That's why. Now, going back to this introduction, right? So I told you why people aren't and candidates aren't getting high band scores in their writing section. There's a lot of really bad ideas about the introduction. So some bad ideas about the introduction of a band 9 essay is that it has to be short. Okay. I don't know where anybody got that idea, but there is no such rule in writing that an introductory paragraph must be short. Okay, your introductory paragraph could be longer than a body paragraph. If you're introducing a complex topic, it could very easily be longer than a body paragraph. Okay, so it doesn't have to be short. Okay, so it's more important that it's clear. All right. Okay, so what's the next question? What's the next question? So the first question about the topic now is correct. What does it mean to provide aid to citizens of poor countries? Sure, improving the quality. Let's go quickly here, students. You do have to think quickly in the exam. So quality of life for impoverished citizens in poor countries by providing basic needs such as nutrition and literacy for both survival and development. What's the... No, Abhil, paraphrasing is not necessarily a good introduction, okay? Again, that's low level. So that's another tip, Abhil, and it's for you and everybody else who's watching, okay? So simply paraphrasing the task 2 question is not a good strategy for high band scores. Just paraphrasing the question is junior, or I would say like this, middle school level essay writing. Okay, so that doesn't do much. So you don't just paraphrase. Abhil, the only reason that you should paraphrase when you're planning is so that you have a clear idea of the question. Okay, you'll see in a second here that the introduction is much more. All right, Kyber says, why is it important to help impoverished citizens of poor countries? Very good, Kyber. So simple to the point. That's the right question. Yeah, Rajveer, same thing. See, Rajveer is asking, why does assistance for impoverished citizens of poor nations, why is assistance for impoverished citizens of poor nations required? Mahmoud, we don't have that question yet, Mahmoud. That's for the controlling idea. Why should rich countries aid poor people who live in poor countries? Okay. All right. So we're still actually just on the topic, which is aid. Who is aiding, but it's just aiding poor countries, right? So why is it necessary to aid the citizens of poor nations? Can you answer this for me? So why is that important? Why do it? Right? It might seem logical, but then give me that logical answer. So why should we aid? Or why should anyone look to aid the citizens of poor countries? Okay, Abil says, growth is only possible when the poor countries are also strong. Yeah, Mahmoud, good point. Yeah, you don't want to be confused between the controlling idea and the topic. The topic here is simply aiding citizens of poor countries. The controlling idea is it just the responsibility of the poor country's government, or should wealthy countries be also responsible and share this responsibility, right? So why do we want to aid the citizens of poor countries? Okay, what comes to mind for me when I critically think about this and visualize it, so it is humanitarian as well as beneficial for all people to aid So it's humanitarian, it's the right thing to do, of course, right? So we don't want other humans to suffer. It's ethically the right choice. And arguably, it's also beneficial for every person on the planet when we have satisfaction, health, and happiness in every country among all people. So the utopic society, right? You can even think about that. So utopic means like the perfect kind of happy society. Okay. All right. So now another really good question, of course, I'm sure everybody will come up with this one, is how can poor citizens be aided? Okay, so what do you think is the best way to aid poor citizens? So what's the number one? What's the best way? And please don't say give them money, because that generally is not. It's actually a proven fact that just giving money is usually not an effective way. So think outside the box. When money is given to people of poor countries, it's usually wasted. It also raises the entire economic structure of the planet, so that money becomes devalued. So just giving money is actually a very poor solution. So think beyond that. Natalie says give work. Giving jobs. Yeah, okay. Think about the question. Think about the original question. So work is okay, but in order to work, what do you need to have? So you can't just start working. I can't become a pharmacist if I don't have the... Yeah, Rashika says give educational support. So education and training is absolutely fundamental. It's arguably fundamental. By the way, there's a very good proverb that comes to mind when I think about this question. I wonder if anybody else knows this proverb. I think it exists in many languages. It has something to do with fish. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? So provide... Yeah, education and training for employment. Food for strength, right? It's hard to work on an empty stomach. All right. Yeah, very good, Chabi. So Chabi says, teach me how to fish and don't give me a fish. Exactly, right? That's a very good proverb. So when you're thinking about these IELTS Task 2 questions, it's a really good idea to think about these wisdoms that we learn and that are common to most cultures and languages and societies. And I think this is one of those proverbs that we hear in just about every language around the world, is teach a person how to fish and they'll never be hungry. Give them a fish and they will only eat for a day, right? So it's very, very true. And this is a point case for that proverb, right? The idea is to teach people how to fish, not just to give them a fish. That's not an efficient solution, right? So think about those proverbs, right? So think about universal wisdoms when you contemplate ideas for IELTS writing. And it's also the same for IELTS speaking. Okay, so EX. Yeah, not just give them a fish, right? Okay, that's the age-old saying. All right, so OS says send experts to countries. Yeah, OS, exactly. So that could be it. All right, now I think logically many of us at this point would realize that, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea for a wealthier country to give aid to a poor country. I'm pretty sure that 9 out of 10 of us would all agree that, you know, wealthier countries should also contribute. So in this case, we need to ask an important question. So if we're all in agreement, okay, let's just all be on the same side here, that wealthier countries should contribute to the development of poor nations' citizens, then what's the right question to ask? What's the next question? Because I think many of us will realize that that's definitely the easier side to take here. What's the question to ask here? Okay? What's the right question? This is a very important question, and you need to identify this. Natalie, it's not who must do it, because we know that it's both wealthy countries and local governments, right? So what's the right question here? There's two important questions that I have spinning in my head before I come up with this thesis statement. Chabi, we know, so we're going one step ahead here. So we know that it should be shared. Okay. Local governments for sure should also provide this support. The question I'm thinking about here is, why should wealthy nations also share in this responsibility? Now, keep in mind, students, that we could write a book about this, but we only have about 300 words. So we have to make it 300 really good words. Okay, if we want to band 9, we have to make it 300 really good words. So my first question is, why should wealthy nations also share in the responsibility of helping the citizens of poor countries? What's the answer to that? So what is the answer to that? And keep it simple. Don't overthink it. And don't think negatives. Think positives. Always think positives in your arguments. Okay? I know that's tricky sometimes, but in Canadian culture and education, this is a big part of it, is think positives. Okay? So why should wealthy nations share this responsibility? So Chabi says, out of kindness and feeling the right thing. Yeah, it's hard to write about that, Chabi. I wouldn't take that approach. I would, it's humane is okay, but I would actually think of something here that's a little bit more quantitative. So think positives, and think something that's measurable. Yeah, I know we all want to be kind and happy and do the right thing, and it's important deep down in our hearts. Of course, that's good. But here we're academic. We want to be a little bit more factual. We want to be a little bit more plausible, something that's more convincing, that can be implemented. Unfortunately, the world doesn't respond to emotions all that much. There we go, Abhil. Very nice. Abhil, great. Happy to have your brain on board. So Abhil says, together we can achieve more progress. That's it, Abhil. I agree. So faster progress. That would be it. That's what I would choose for my answer. And I'm sure many of you are realizing that this is becoming one of my thesis points. Okay, so okay, so for all of you who said, Kyber, yeah, that's not the, so it will be useful for the rich countries as well. Yes, but it's not, that's secondary. You always want to think primary, Kyber. And the primary is that it leads to faster and more efficient progress. Does everybody see that this point will be fairly easy to write a body paragraph on and will be very clear for the reader? It's an easy argument to make, and it's a very valid argument to make. Okay, so you really want to identify these kinds of points to write a much faster and better essay. Okay, so when you have the help of the wealthier country, it should lead, arguably, some people might say that's not the case. It depends on how they give the help, but it should lead to faster progress. Okay. All right. And what's the next question that I need to ask? Think about the original question. Okay. Since I'm a little bit short on time, I'm going to give it to you here. So why should local governments also be responsible? Okay, so here's the next question. Why should local governments be also responsible? Okay, think about this one. So now we know that, okay, yes, wealthy countries should contribute to help speed up progress, make it more efficient. And of course, local authorities also have to be highly responsible for providing for their own citizens. Why? Aside from it's their job, of course. Okay. Preeti says improve global economy, maybe. Abhil says the basic thing, less corruption from the local government. Not really. Okay, that's a little bit, again, think from the positive, Abhil. So instead of less corruption, you would have better society. Okay, so think positive side. Janil, that's, again, a little bit off track. People giving their valuable votes. Okay. Think about it. If it's just the wealthier country that's dealing with the education, then that creates an issue. So they have information about, yeah, I agree, but I would, again, keep it okay, so Mahmoud, good. Mahmoud says to have a stable and strong society. Yeah, exactly. So why should local governments also be responsible to create an independent and strong society? Okay, so we can explain how and why in the explanation part, but arguably local governments need to be responsible so that you have an independent and strong society. You don't want to have a society that's completely dependent on foreign aid, because if that foreign aid removes itself, then problems appear. And that can happen. Like right now with this pandemic, a lot of the wealthier countries are having their own issues. So they're not able to give aid to the poor countries. And now people in those poor countries are in a lot more trouble if they're not independent. So local governments must work towards independence, an independently strong economy. Does that make sense? So the word here is independence. Okay, that's what you're looking for. All right, and once I have all of this information, okay, and I'm doing this quickly, I think that, you know, in the class, it took us like 40 minutes to get here, but in the real IELTS, this is really only taking me about 4 or 5 minutes. So when you're trained to ask the right questions and give the right answers, then it happens. And Kyber, I know you keep asking, like, how do I do that? Well, it just takes a lot of practice and training and visualization, and then you will get there. Okay? So once I have this, I can now put together my thesis statement. And my thesis statement here, it's third person because there's no question about my opinion, and it is kind of objective, right? So it is both the responsibility of wealthier nations as well as local governments of poorer countries to aid their citizens. The former is needed for faster progress, and the latter for strong independence. Okay, so here is my thesis statement coming out of all of that planning. And you can, of course, come up with this very, very quickly when you have taken the right steps. So thesis, it is both the responsibility of wealthier nations as well as local governments of poorer countries to aid their citizens. The former is needed for faster progress and the latter for strong independence. Notice the parallel grammar: faster progress, strong independence, okay? Not just independence, all right? Okay. Now I can build my introduction at the university level, okay? So Hook, background, thesis. Okay? And instead of rushing through this, I'm going to give you this for homework. So, and we'll go over it on Saturday in detail. Okay? So hook, background, and thesis. I have my thesis. I just wrote it. Okay? Those are the three elements of your introduction. If you're new to this and it's not 100% clear, don't worry. We will do it together on Saturday as well, and then we'll get into the body paragraphs and the conclusion, okay? But for those of you who already know what you're doing, please do this for homework so that you can share it with us on Saturday, and then we can look through it together, okay? The thesis we already have, so you don't have to worry about that. You can practice writing your own thesis. Just make sure it's synonymous with the thesis that I've just written, okay? All right, and that's what you need, okay? That's what's expected by a professor in an English literature class in university, or you could have this question in a human geography class or in a sociology class or in a political science class, for example. So this is how you would formulate your introduction, all right? Okay. Yeah, Abhil, I'm sure you're a little bit confused right now, but don't worry. Check out some of the videos on the YouTube channel today, tomorrow, about writing and writing task 2. A lot of it will become clear. Abhil, just remember, this isn't my method. It's not the IELTS method. It's the standard persuasive essay structure in English literature, and of course in many other academic spheres and languages as well. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just simply following the exact steps for an introductory paragraph that you would learn in middle school, high school, and first year college in an English class, okay? And that's not just paraphrase the question. Sometimes there is no question. You create the information, okay? All right. Okay, everyone, so come back in 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and we will be looking at a reading passage together. I will go through it with you, go through some questions with you, and we will further develop our English literacy and critical thinking strategies for the reading section. So you're welcome, everybody. I can see there's lots of members in this class, which is fantastic. I always love having you here with me. Hopefully I will catch all of you in about half an hour. Until then, take a break, get a glass of water, hydrate, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now. Oh, and do remember to get all of our videos, and it's a one-time payment for lifetime access. It's definitely worth joining us at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. See you soon.